Found in many churches in England and continental Europe, Misericords are seats of ancient monastic stalls, which were made to turn up to form a narrow bracket affording support during long church services in medieval times. The name Misericords, or indulgent seats, derived from the Latin misericordia, meaning acts of mercy, insomuch that the monks had not to stand all through the services, but could, at times, rest their weight on the wooden brackets. The carvings on the underside of the seats show great skill, spirit, and accomplishment. The subjects covered are varied, including grotesque figures, beasts, demons, animals, birds, satirical and allegorical scenes, seasonal occupation, and months of the year. The Priory Misericords originally represented two complete series of 12 carvings, one set of miscellaneous subjects, still complete, and one set depicting a calendar of the months, now incomplete. It is believed that the carvings which relate to the months of the year are 15th century, dating from about 1450 to 1480. Most of the other works are a century earlier, dating from 1350 to 1380. The months of the year are no longer in an arranged series, having been at some stage set out of sequence, probably in the 19th century, when the stalls were removed from their original position. At about the same time, the stalls were smothered in black paint, traces of which can still be seen today. I begin my tour with those stalls at the north side of the chancel, on the left facing the altar and the front row. The first misericord we see is of a man holding up two wine cups, seated at a table. He probably represents January. In some carved calendars, the figure for January has two heads, one looking back on the old year, one looking forward to the new. This is a representation of Janus, the Roman god who gave us our name for the first month. The supporters either side are of roses, symbols of the royal houses of Lancaster and York. Holding what appears to be a pair of long-handed shears, a man is seen weeding. He is believed to represent the month of April. Figure is using two tools with which the growing corn used to be weeded, and the method involved a twofold process. His right hand holds down a weed or plant with a forked stick, while the left cuts it off with a curved hook. On the other side are two birds with outstretched claws, a reference to the common pigeon, enemies as are the weeds to gardens and crops. Here, 3 rats or mice are hanging a cat by pulling a rope over the crossbar fixed on 2 rough stays. The supporters on either side are 2 owls. Barn owls are mice-eaters. These 2 are probably there to take warning from the cat's fate. On this misericord, we see a man with a scythe haymaking. It represents the month of June. The scythe, with its long curved blade, situated at the end of a long pole, onto which are 1 or 2 short handles, are still in use to this day. In this next carving, we see a man carrying a basket of fruit across his right arm. In his raised left hand is a bunch of grapes. Large buttons trim his tunic. This is a representation of September. In churches across England, scenes of boar hunting and threshing illustrate September occupations. Carving is of a cockatrice or basilisk, whose glance was mortal. This mythical reptile was hatched by a serpent from a cock's egg, and thus had a body of a cock and a tail of a reptile. The old bestiaries or books of legendary monsters record that, as a fledgling, the basilisk hid from the moment of its birth, for if a man saw it before he was seen by the basilisk, the creature died. On the other hand, if the basilisk saw the man first, the glance was fatal. The only way to overcome the beast was to hold a crystal vessel before one's face so that the creature saw its own reflection and was thus destroyed. In legends and scriptural references, the cockatrice is a terrible creature. Even the most venomous serpent flees before it. In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 8, verse 17, we read, "Behold, I will send serpents, cockatrices among you, which will not be charmed, and they will bite you." Again, in chapter 10, verse 8 of the book of Isaiah, the following: "The suckling child shall play on the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the cockatrice's den." Having completed the first row, I will now move on to the row behind and the second set of stalls. At first glance, this creature looks like a bull or a large mastiff. Look at the feet though, and the truth be known. This is in fact a lion. Leo is the 5th sign of the zodiac, and belief has it that this lion represents July. In sculpture and carving, the lion symbolises vigilance, or is an emblem of St. Mark. Some representations, he stands for the devil, who goeth about like a roaring lion, seeking whom to devour. In others, the lion, who among the monsters of the bestiaries, was supposed to bring back life to his dead cubs by roaring over them, symbolising the Lion of Judah and the resurrection. A swineherdsman here is knocking down acorns from an oak tree. He represents October. In medieval times, there was no barley meal for pigs. They had to get their living as best they could out in the woods. Autumn, the swineherd fattened them ready for slaughter by providing a generous diet of acorns. At some point in time, this bracket was broken, and together with the carving was reset upside down. The subject matter is doubtful, but may represent a drunkard being beaten by his wife. Look carefully and you will see the little prone figure, perhaps a servant or a crony, who appears to be drinking out of a blackjack or tarred leather bottle. This carving is of 2 long-necked grotesque figures. Both have interesting faces. One is a bearded man with clawed feet. The other is perhaps a woman with webbed feet. Both have wings and tails. Monstrosities and compound figures of beasts, reptiles and birds, some with human heads, were popular in the Middle Ages, and derived variously from the books of bestiaries and travellers' tales. As in number 3 of this same row, a wife appears to have the upper hand. She has collected water in her large pitcher, and now appears to lay about her husband's head with a distaff, the cleft top of which, with wool or flax wound about it, may still be seen, though the staff is broken. This is probably the representation for February. Representing March, this carving shows a sower with a sack of corn and a basket slung over his shoulder. The supporters are 2 pigeons, canny attendants upon seed sowing out in the fields. I now turn my attention to the stalls on the south side of the chancel, on the right facing the altar, beginning, as before, with the front row. In the centre of this misericord is a head, assumed to represent a face mask used by mummers. These were popular actors in traditional masked mimes, especially of a type associated with Christmas and other various festivities, that grew, for the most part, out of pagan rites, jumbles of religion and clownishness. "A mumming we will go," sang the young men of the village, as they descended upon every house from the squire's hall to the farmer's kitchen at Christmas time. This carving is of a fine head, probably a portrait from life of a man with long hair and sporting a round cap and wearing a well-turned-out tunic. Next, we have a man seen killing an ox, a subject representing December. He is wearing a doublet and hose, and his poleaxe is broken, and the ox has a look of benign resignation. Historians believe that in medieval times, come winter, a great slaughter would occur for practical reasons. As there was no more grass for the livestock, all had to be killed except the plough ox and as many cows and sheep as could be fed on the scanty stock of hay. All this beef and mutton was therefore salted down or pickled and barrelled. No more fresh meat to the spring. This misericord has a lighter note. An angel in a cope with wings outstretched plays a cither or cittern. These were stringed instruments similar to a lute, with a flattened back and wire strings, which enjoyed great popularity in England and continental Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries. With this carving, we are back with the bestiaries, this time a wyvern, an heraldic beast, a bat-winged dragon with 2 eagle's legs and a barbed tail. The wyvern was a great favourite on Misericords, probably as it was easier to fit in a 2-legged wyvern than a 4-legged dragon. The following is a representation of May, seen here showing a man carrying 2 bunches of flowers. Such a person would walk in the procession and ceremonies before Ascension Day at Rogation time. This was a time of great feasting and rejoicing, when the whole parish and country went forth in processions with banners and posies of flowers. This spring festival may have derived from pagan times, a survival of the Roman Florilia. I complete my tour of the ancient Misericords of Malvern Abbey with the back row of stalls on the south side of the chancel. Here we see 2 grotesques, back to back, craning their necks around to face each other. The figure on the left has a hooded human head, probably that of a monk or jester, in cap and bells and 2-toed feet. The right, a beast or duck's head with something in its mouth, and human feet. These are creatures of fancy, dear to the medieval mind, and may even have represented some satire long forgotten. Look at the little faces in monk-type hoods on each side. One scowls, the other smiles. A merman holds a mirror in his left hand, whilst a mermaid has a comb in her right in this Misericord. The mermaid derives from the classical siren, who charmed mariners with her music and lured them to destruction. These modernized Anglo-Saxon lines describe her: merrily singeth she, and has many melodies. Shipmen steering forget for her many melodies. Slumber and sleep, and too late waken. The ship sinks with the guile, and comes up no more. Normally, a mermaid is represented with a comb in one hand, a mirror in the other, as seen here on the Misericord at Cartmel Priory in Grange-over-Sands, Cumbria, and similarly at the Church of St Lawrence in Ludlow, Shropshire. There is a chance that the Malvern mermaid once held a fish in her left hand, which has since broken off. This penultimate Misericord shows a sick man lying in bed, supported by his wife or a nurse, while the doctor examines a flask. The final carving in this row is of a man whose feet and cowl suggest that of a monk, driving away a demon or devil out of a man with a pair of bellows. Bellows, apart from being used on fires, were employed by stonemasons for dusting intricate and delicate carving and cleaning the finials of the niches. Perhaps the carver of this Misericord is himself warding off the arch-enemy with a weapon at hand. A few of the small carvings which terminate the arms of the stalls should not be missed. A fox in a monk's cowl, a squirrel eating a nut, a jovial face, beautifully carved bearded man, and a lady. My journey through the ancient Misericords of the Priory Church in Great Malvern has ended. These fascinating carvings have given me a glimpse back to the life and times of the Middle Ages, their pastimes, beliefs, interests and customs. A way of life lived long ago, but thanks to these wonderful carvings, not forgotten.